Now, lessons learned from the California Freeway Collapse in Oakland. NewsHour correspondent Spencer Michaels has our Science Unit report.
At 3:40 a.m. on the last Sunday in April, a gasoline truck crashed into the guardrail on a major California freeway near the San Francisco-Oakland Bay Bridge and burst into flames. The fire was so intense it caused an overpass to collapse. The damage closed two heavily traveled freeways and caused commuters to alter their routes.
The collapse of the freeways was more than just a local traffic nightmare. It was an object lesson in freeway construction and demolition, and it had many similarities to the obliteration of the World Trade Center.
Abul Hassan Astani should know. He's a professor of civil engineering at the University of California at Berkeley, and was one of the leading structural engineers who studied the collapse of the World Trade Center on 9/11.
In both of them, basically the fire was the reason why steel got soft and weak and collapsed. In both of them, I feel that we as engineers, if we had looked at them and learned the lessons, we could really apply these lessons to build safe structures.
Astani quickly fired off an application to make a forensic investigation of the crash, to figure out why the structures behaved the way they did and to prevent it from happening again. Within 3 hours, he got word he was awarded a $25,000 grant from the National Science Foundation, which also partially funds the NewsHour's Science Unit. But getting the grant money was only part of the challenge. Astani, a native of Iran, had to use his ingenuity to gain access to the collapse site, because the California Department of Transportation, or Caltrans, delayed sending him the necessary paperwork.
I don't know exactly why Caltrans did not act as fast as this thing requires. When you get a grant in 3 hours, you expect to start your project the next hour, not after 3 days.
With no time to waste, Astani, who has 35 years' experience investigating earthquakes and other disasters, donned a hard hat and a reflective vest.
We are not going to cross this line here.
He and his graduate student managed to get into the crash site without formal permission. They took photos of the damage before demolition crews could destroy the data.
This data is so unique. What you see behind me, this specimen, is the most valuable specimen you can have regarding bridges subjected to fire.
Using whatever it took, Astani confidently gathered information. He made his case to Caltrans engineers who were on site.
Because every time there's something like this, you guys in Caltrans, the responsibility that you have is to clean it up as fast as you can, to rebuild as fast as you can. That is your job. But at the same time, those steel pieces are important to the scientific community. Sure. We want to study them and see how much temperature was.
He gained an ally by speaking Farsi to the senior resident engineer, who turned out to be a fellow Iranian American. And he persuaded the operator of an elevated work platform to take him right up next to the damaged stub of the freeway, where he could photograph and take samples of the burned steel. He says his trained eye can figure out some details like temperatures during the fire on the spot.
Girders most likely reached about 1,000 to 1,500 degrees, and that is enough to collapse them. So they collapsed. So the word melting should not be used for girders, because there is no melting of girders. I saw melting of girders in World Trade Center.
But they got soft, though, didn't they?
Yes. When it still gets to 1,000 degrees, it loses its strength.
Astani spent a lot of time attempting to make sure Caltrans didn't recycle the damaged steel, clues to the collapse.
But they've been cut. A lot of them have been cut.
Maybe they're like, I can imagine, 40 foot.
Yeah, 40 foot. We cut them about half.
What he found out was that it had been taken to a large scrapyard so it could be sold. He called it crime scene evidence and worried it would meet the same fate as the World Trade Center steel.
After 9/11, we realized that Port Authority of New York and New Jersey has sent all the steel that we need to study. That's why I'm here to study steel. Has sent all the steel to recycling plant to go to China for recycling. For what? For 15 cents a pound. Just nothing. And all the evidence of steel went to melting pot.
After 9/11, a law was passed requiring that such materials be saved for study. But in this case, it was Astani's direct dealing with fellow engineers that preserved the evidence. For Astani, this small triumph was tempered by his discovery a few days later, after looking at his photos.
I found that the location of one of these sampling, these are called core. Certainly there's a crack here. You can see this crack here. And that crack, in my opinion, should have been really a call for Caltrans to indicate that now we need to do more investigation because we don't know how many cracks are where. I think that the politicians are putting too much pressure on engineers to get it open. I think this should not be repaired until we are sure that we know what is that pier, what is inside it, what is safe.
A Caltrans spokesman, when told of Astani's discovery and his other concerns, declined to respond with an on-camera interview, but in an email wrote, "Caltrans is already looking at what changes, if any, we should consider in light of this rare occurrence. Caltrans is certainly interested in what others may come up with to help us manage all risks." One change Astani thinks Caltrans should seriously consider is building freeways further apart, so that a fire on one level does not destroy the roadway above it.
How do you do it? Very simple. Just build your bridge taller. Very simple. It's just
So these are too close together.
Yes, they were actually only 20 feet apart.
Astani has been lobbying policymakers to draw lessons from this accident. He thinks double-decker freeways at critical junctures should be redesigned, using more fire-resistant steel and paint, which are already in use in Japan, or coating the steel girders with concrete, which can work as a fire retardant.
Now, we are rebuilding this the same way, fine, because we want to get this catastrophe out of our way. This is disaster in the Bay Area. Yesterday I spent 2 hours on traffic, okay? So what we should do is, let's build this as fast as we can, but we have to identify critical bridges. We have to identify where trucks are too close to my bridge, to steel bridges.
And do some
fix them.
rebuilding.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
You're right, you're right, you're right.
But at a news conference attended by a number of politicians who trekked through the mud at the construction site, the U.S. Secretary of Transportation, Mary Peters, dismissed the threat of danger resulting from freeway design.
Well, we certainly believe that the highway system around the country is safe. We're doing an analysis to determine what happened here, and certainly we can learn from this, but the system is absolutely safe.
Peters said the federal government will pay to repair the damage, starting with $2 million immediately. California's Director of Transportation, Will Kempton, said the state is going to study its freeway bridges.
The system is safe. This was a freak accident, but obviously we want to do whatever we can to try to avoid these incidents in the future.
Engineers working for the state have taken core samples of concrete and steel and already begun analyzing some of the burned parts at labs in Sacramento and in Austin, Texas. It was as a result of this analysis that the lower roadway was reopened after some quick repairs just a little more than a week after the accident. Like the professor, Caltrans officials cut through red tape of their own. They expect to have the roadway opened in record time, and they are paying the quickly hired contractor a $200,000 bonus for each day the job is finished prior to a June 27th deadline.